Iran, to the delight of their enemies, continues to suffer nationwide blackouts. For up to 6 hours a day in some cases, even in the capital, Tehran, electricity is being restricted or turned off because there's simply not enough energy, not enough power to go around. Wow, you might think, how backwards of a country, right? How mismanaged by their government. This is what happens when you have a theocracy. Dave, look what happens when you have Islam. The religion of peace is striking again, right? Right? Well, no. In fact, analytically speaking, given the intensity of sanctions Iran has faced for the last 5 decades, they're actually not doing too bad. And the assessment of many economists and strategists align with this fact, stepping out of line. For example, with America in 1979 after the Iranian Islamic Revolution, basically standing up to the superpower of the age and saying, we're going to put our own country and our own people first. We're not going to bow down to you and just accept the scraps like some other states have decided to do. Gulf monarchies, maybe, just saying analytically. Iran chose a different path. After choosing that different path, stepping out of line, rivaling a superpower, and still being alive as a state, 50 years later, outliving the superpower status of the United States of America, it's not exactly failure. But what are these sanctions on Iran that you hear about? I've talked about it a ton. You hear about it all the time. Iran is sanctioned. That's why its economy is rubbish. Da 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 da. Well, in 10 minutes or less today, I'm going to present to you my well-researched, hopefully articulated delivery of information so that in a single TikTok post, you're going to end up knowing more than 99% of people and you can disseminate it and look really smart to your family or your friends. And they're going to be like, yo, this guy's sick as a geopolitical analyst. But then don't hide my account from your mates just so that you can be the one to give them the information. Give them the TikTok page. Give them the TikTok. Don't try it. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I know this is set up on your dashboard. Anyway, sorry. As you commute to work. Anyway, a reminder, just one more thing before we carry on. I don't have another TikTok account. If you're watching this, go to the page you're watching this video on. If it's got less than 260,000 followers, you're being scammed, okay? They're going to talk about blockchain, crypto. Join me on Telegram, brother. Are you enjoying the video, brother? No, you're not enjoying the video. Stop. Shut up, copycat. Anyway, back to the topic. Iran is rich in potential and poor relative to that potential, primarily because the Western Bloc, led by the United States of America, keeps Iran poor. Imagine a bully on the playground that wants to torment, to isolate one specific kid. So they send out the word across the whole playground. Anybody who talks to this kid is mincemeat. They're in for a world of hurt, economically, right, in this case. This is essentially what Iran is facing, has faced for the last 50 years. Secondary sanctions from the US. The word given out by the bully is any American company that deals with this country, that does business with Iran in certain sectors, say energy infrastructure, say natural gas storage, say electricity transmission, any other listed field, pretty much all of it, really, anything to do with Iran, they will face beat-ups, sanctions. Those companies will be put under economic pressure so severe, it may cause them to just go bust as a company. You flopped, right? To lose out on business in America, America-aligned states, you can just sit in Iran, do business there, which is basically like not doing business at all for these American companies that make way more money in America, obviously, and allied countries. And no company, therefore, will subject themselves to economic suicide for the sake of doing business in a potential emerging market like Iran. Large population, but very little current spending power of the population there. So the isolation is established. But here is how secondary sanctions really make Iran suffer. Let's turn to China. Why does China not step in, you might wonder? China has the tech and therefore can transfer the energy tech to Iran, right? Its ally, right? China has the engineers. China can lift Iranian infrastructure into the modern world from the backdated situation it's currently in. It can do it, and it can do it easily. Yet it doesn't. Why? لماذا? I don't know the Farsi for why, so I just use the Arabic, which is kind of stereotyping because Persians and Arabs are very. Anyway, don't get me wrong. China buys Iranian oil already, yes, in the hundreds of barrels, or in the hundreds of millions of barrels, but it won't invest in Iran's out-of-date power infrastructure. Because even here, America has measures in place as well. The American legislation titled, I read this out to you, the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act. America actually has an act just for Iran and China, right? Specifically for them. And it targets Chinese financial institutions that help Iran, any banks, any investment vehicles, any energy companies, any businesses really, Chinese specifically, that does business with Iran, America will make sure they can't do business anywhere else, right? Nowhere else in the Western world. And this creates massive risks. And this is even before Trump. This creates massive risks for Chinese companies. So they keep their nose clean. They stay out of America's way. They don't want to help the kid being bullied because it's not worth it for China. China puts China first. If they could help Iran without own goaling themselves, they would. But at the moment they can't, so they don't. So American private companies and American state companies won't help Iran because of sanctions. And Chinese private companies won't help Iran either because of sanctions. That leaves essentially just one other main source: Chinese state companies. If the Chinese and every other country in the world, by the way, it just falls into the same situation that the Chinese private companies fall into, and they're less able than Chinese companies to help, so they stay out of the way. Now, the last potential investor that could lift Iran out of where it is, the Chinese state. If the Chinese Communist Party invests and supports Iran directly, they could lift them out into the modern energy infrastructure world. But the Chinese state funds and holds stakes in energy companies with businesses elsewhere. The Chinese energy companies that the state is part of, they have their finger in many pies. The Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, chief among them. It's their biggest energy pie. China imports, for example, about 1.8 million barrels of crude oil from Iran. From the GCC countries combined, though, China imports between 4 and 6 million barrels. Way more, right? 2 to 4 to whatever times more oil. So Chinese companies import oil from Iran and twice or maybe 3 times or 4 times as much oil from the Arab states. Chinese companies and therefore the Chinese state cannot afford to torpedo their GCC oil flow, the Gulf Cooperation Council, the Arab state oil flow, in favor of Iranian oil flow. One does not set their master bedroom on fire in order to make renovations to their smaller second bedroom. So Iran sits on huge untapped energy reserves, sovereign, their reserves, but the cutting edge modern tech needed to extract that. And the Persian people, or the Iranian people generally, because Persian ethnicity is like 60%, so the Iranian people generally cannot benefit, not because of mismanagement of their government, but because of these crippling, suffocating sanctions. They can't benefit from it. And so the Iranian state runs into a deficit, a shortfall of electricity and natural gas for now. But the world is changing. As America further isolates itself and the Gulf Cooperation Council states drift towards China for their futures, America's hold on essentially all nations at the moment, as far as keeping things as they are, keeping Iran isolated, this freezing effect that it has on Iran's energy infrastructure, the American sanctions, that has a freezing effect, that's now faltering, that's now melting, right? The freezing effect is failing, like Megatron when he was about to come out of the ice. Because, anyway, Iran's energy sector is not expected to remain frozen for long, as analysts suggest. If China secures the energy resources of the Gulf states, and those states are no longer under America's umbrella, a reality slowly materializing, inexorably, right, undeniably, then Iran and Saudi Arabia and the other and Qatar and the other Gulf states are likely to benefit from economic cooperation between themselves and China and cease to be rivals. At that point, new investment mechanisms are likely to be explored and established to work with Iran to develop and then mutually prosper from their huge energy stores because they're untapped, right? Digging for oil, trying to extract natural gas, the more you extract, the more expensive it gets to extract more because you're having to work harder for it, right? The low hanging fruit is gone, the easily available resources is gone. But in Iran, the energy infrastructure is not developed yet. So it's much more cost effective if a business could get in without American sanctions absolutely torpedoing their business model. So, like the Persian lion itself, Iran's natural resources are asleep. They remain dormant for a time when America's freezing effect can no longer keep them trapped. And now you have the understanding that probably 99% of people, when it comes to why Iran struggles with energy, 99% of people do not know. and why its global South allies can also not help. Well, at least not help yet. Thank you for lending me your attentive ears. Don't forget to check my bio for all kinds of links to a variety of ways to stay connected to me. And I shall leave it there for now. Ladies and gentlemen, for the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin, I'm Mahfouz, and I'll see you on the next one.